It's Saturday, July 2nd, and this morning I want to talk about a strike that's looming on the West Coast. This is a strike between the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, which represents about 22,000 workers at 29 ports between San Diego and Seattle. And on the other side of the Pacific Maritime Association, which represents the shipping terminals. And the contract is set to expire on Friday. Now, the strike is not about money, really, because most of the workers on the docks are making in the low six figures. But the strike is about automation, about the ability to speed up the process of unloading the cargo container. This would be done by robots, and we know that robots don't take any breaks, they don't get any vacation, they don't get any sick leave. They work 12, 14, 16 hours a day in it. So that is a threat, not to the current workforce, but to the future workforce. Now, this strike will affect more than the union members, because there is a group of truck drivers who are independent contractors and who work delivering merchandise from the ports to other warehouses where they get distributed regionally or whatever happens to it. And one of those truck drivers who was telling this story said that he works 16 hours a day usually, and he makes 4 different trips around the terminals between Long Beach, California and Los Angeles, California, and he picks stuff up and he delivers it. But if this union goes on strike, all of these truck drivers will not be working either. Now, this is a man who says that if he's working on 16-hour days and he's doing his 4 loads a day, he's making about $4,000 a week. But gasoline is costing him $1,200 a week nowadays. So he's barely skimping through, right? But he's telling this story because he wants everybody to understand the big picture. And that is a sad picture for people working 16 hours a day and making $4,000 a week, which is $200,000, but then they're spending $60,000 on gasoline. That doesn't strike me as a really good deal. But this gentleman wanted to do this work ever since he was a kid because his father did this work, and he loved riding around in the truck with his father and listening to the Dodgers play baseball at that time. The Los Angeles Dodgers, not the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, those ports are very important to the U.S. economy because in and around Los Angeles, 40% of the merchandise that ends up in the retail stores in that area between San Diego and Los Angeles and even up the coast to San Francisco comes in through the ships. So those ships, when they were logged down in the harbor at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a disaster for the people out on the West Coast and for the rest of the country. Now, I understand the threat of automation. I had a lot of experience with automation because when I worked with Publishers Clearinghouse, we were able to scan all the order forms. If you all remember, you got a mailing and you put some stamps on the stamp sheet and you sent it back in. And those stamp sheets were not data entered by people because if they had to be data entered, we at Publishers Clearinghouse could never process the millions of orders that we got weekly, right? We could process several million orders because we had these optical scanners. So automation in my life, in my early career, was a big thing, a big deal. And I never thought about the fact that we were replacing hundreds of people who would have been key punching or typing those orders. But that's the breaks of the game. And remember that if you had to have those hundreds of employees, you could not really run a successful business at that point because the volume would not be handled properly. It would take weeks instead of a couple of days to process all those orders. And so I'm looking at it from that perspective at the dock workers. And I can understand the threat to their jobs. But I think that the union has to recognize the fact that they are in a position that they must go to automation, and they have to protect the jobs of their people, and I can understand that too. So you sit down and negotiate a contract, and you make sure that everybody who is currently working is going to continue to be working, and that everybody who's currently working could have an opportunity to perhaps learn how to work alongside whatever automation they need to empty those containers. Because let's face it, you have seen what happened to the automobile industry and many other industries where they brought robots in to do the work of humans. Those workforces virtually disappeared, right? I don't know how many people still belong to the Auto Workers of America or whatever, the CIO, the AFL. Those unions, I don't hear much about them anymore. Now, I was a union guy when I was growing up, and I worked in the warehouses around New York City while I was getting a college education, and then I went to the post office to get an education, and we automated in the post office too. So automation is not a real threat to the current working population, but to the future, it could be a real threat. So as you can imagine, there are two diametrically opposed viewpoints on this issue. The Maritime Association looks at it this way. We need to enable greater cargo throughput and continued cargo growth over time. So in their mind, expanding the business is tied to the speed at which we can empty those containers. And that would mean if they could process faster, there would be more ships in the harbor coming in, right? Whereas the union president, Willie Adams, in his attack against moving toward automation, said it would translate into lost jobs. And they are prioritizing profits over what's best for America. Now, in my mind, some combination is best for America. Some combination that keeps these people working. Some combination that gives other people the opportunity to learn about automation, to work with the automatons, and to help America grow. So I understand the union's position, and I understand management's position also. And it's a difficult position to come to grips with. But once again, we are faced with compromise. And we haven't learned how to do that very well in this country so far. So I leave you with those thoughts this morning, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.